Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. We don't run tabs for people like you. The words sliced through the diner's muted chatter, leaving silence in their wake. The young mother's hands trembled as she clutched her wallet, coins spilling onto the laminated menu. Her children, one in a wheelchair, watched with hollow eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Rain lashed against the windows of the roadside diner, its neon sign flickering weakly against the night. Truckers hunched over coffee cups, pretending not to notice. The manager stood with arms crossed, his name tag gleaming under fluorescent lights, power embodied in a polyester uniform. In the corner booth, a large figure in a rain-soaked jacket paused mid-sip, his face shadowed beneath a baseball cap. "Please," the woman whispered, dignity crumbling as she gathered her coins. "Just something for my kids." But the manager was already gesturing toward the door, voice rising with each word. What no one noticed was how the man in the corner had set down his coffee, how his shoulders straightened as the family retreated into the storm. Some moments define us. This would be one of them. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. The door swung shut behind the woman, a bell chiming with cruel cheeriness as she huddled her children under a thin jacket against the rain. The older child, no more than 8, pushed his sibling's wheelchair, tiny hands determined on the handles while his mother gathered the scattered pieces of her pride. Through the streaked windows, her silhouette was that of a soldier in retreat, shoulders bent but not broken. Inside, the diner resumed its rhythm, cutlery against plates, coffee being poured, a radio murmuring about tomorrow's weather. The manager tugged his vest straight, addressing the room with a half shrug. Rules are rules. A few customers nodded, relieved to have the uncomfortable moment behind them. Others studied their food with sudden intensity. But in the back corner, the large man's reflection watched it all in the rain-streaked window, jaw working beneath his stubble. Dwayne Johnson had spent 20 years playing heroes on screen. The difference between the man and his characters, however, was that when cameras stopped rolling, Dwayne never did. The waitress, Cindy, according to her name tag, hesitated by the corner table, coffee pot trembling slightly in her grip. She'd recognized him the moment he walked in, but had respected his obvious desire for anonymity. Now, though, something in his expression made her pause. "You okay there, hon?" she asked, voice lowered. Dwayne looked up, rain dripping from his cap. How much would their meal have cost? Cindy glanced toward her manager, who was now berating a kitchen worker through the service window. "Probably $30, tops," she whispered. "She comes in sometimes. Works 2 jobs since her husband died. The little one's got muscular dystrophy." She sighed, a tiny act of rebellion. "Look, I'd help if I could, but Rick checks the register down to the penny." Outside, the family had reached their car, an ancient sedan with a mismatched door. The mother was struggling to fold the wheelchair as rain soaked through her clothes. The children watched from the back seat, small faces pale in the darkness. Dwayne placed his mug down with a deliberate gentleness that belied the tension in his massive frame. 20 years in entertainment had taught him the weight of eyes upon him, how to use it, how to ignore it, and most importantly, when it mattered. Right now, no one was watching. No cameras, no fans, no publicity team calculating the optics. Just a man, witnessing something wrong, with the power to make it right. Sometimes the most powerful thing isn't what you lift, his father had told him once, but what you carry for others. He reached for his wallet, then paused. Money was easy. He had more than he'd ever dreamed possible growing up. But money alone wouldn't address what had happened here. The humiliation, the casual cruelty, the lesson being taught to those children about their place in the world. Some situations required more than cash. They required presence, character, the things that no amount of fame could fake. Dwayne Johnson stood up, his chair scraping against linoleum. At 6'5", he didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. The diner fell silent as heads turned, recognition dawning across faces. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside the atmosphere had suddenly changed. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. Excuse me. His voice carried that distinctive blend of warmth and authority that had launched a dozen franchises. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A teenage dishwasher peeked through the kitchen window, eyes widening. The manager, Rick, turned slowly, customer service smile freezing as he processed who stood before him. "You're," Rick began. "Just a customer," Dwayne interrupted, his smile not reaching his eyes. "One who'd like to understand your policy a little better." He gestured toward the door where the family had disappeared. "That woman. She offered to pay Friday, right?" Rick straightened his tie, glancing around at the now attentive diners. Recognition had sparked across the room. Phones were emerging from pockets, whispers circulating. His audience was growing. "Company policy," Rick said, voice firmer than his expression. "No credit, no exceptions. Attracts the wrong element." "Wrong element," Dwayne repeated, voice deceptively gentle. "Two hungry kids and their mom trying to make it through the week?" He stepped closer, towering over the manager. "Tell me something. What exactly did you see when you looked at that family?" A woman at a nearby table lowered her fork, no longer pretending not to listen. The teenage server beside her whispered something that sounded like, "Oh my God." Behind the counter, Cindy was frozen, coffee pot suspended in midair. Rick's confidence wavered, caught between authority and celebrity. "Look, Mr. Johnson, I appreciate your concern, but you don't understand the business. Give handouts once, they'll expect it every time. We're not a charity." He attempted a conspiratorial smile. "I'm sure someone like you understands bottom lines." A rumble of discontent passed through the diner. Someone muttered, "Asshole." A phone camera flashed. Dwayne nodded thoughtfully as if considering Rick's position. Then he turned to address the room. "You know, I was broke once. Dead broke. $7 in my pocket broke." His voice carried to every corner without effort. "I know what it's like to count coins for a meal, to worry about tomorrow's food while you're still hungry today." He turned back to Rick. "A charity helps people without expecting anything in return. That woman wasn't asking for charity. She was asking for trust, the kind that communities used to be built on." Outside, the family's car was still in the parking lot, hood up despite the rain. Through the windows, they could see the mother attempting to restart the engine, shoulders slumped in defeat. "I've played a lot of different roles," Dwayne continued, voice lowering so the room leaned in to hear him. "But there's one thing I've learned both on screen and off. It's easy to be tough when you've got all the power. Real strength?" He pointed toward the struggling family. "Real strength is what that woman shows every single day." Rick's face flushed red, trapped between his policy and the court of public opinion now judging him. The entire diner had transformed into an audience, breaths held, waiting for the next line in this unexpected drama. Someone's phone was definitely recording now, held high from a booth in the corner. "I'd like to pay for their meal," Dwayne said, reaching for his wallet. and I'd like them to come back inside out of the rain." Rick's relief was palpable. A quick exchange of money would end this, save face. "Of course, Mr. Johnson. Happy to help." "I'm not finished," Dwayne said, voice hardening just enough to clip Rick's response. "I'd like to pay for their meal, but I don't think I should have to." His gaze swept the room, connecting with the other customers. "Because this isn't about me. It's not about celebrity or cameras or doing the right thing because people are watching. It's about what we do when we think no one is." A crack of thunder punctuated his words. Through the windows, they could see the mother closing the hood, resignation in every movement as she returned to comfort her children. "So, here's what's going to happen," Dwayne continued, turning back to Rick, whose smug confidence had entirely evaporated. "You're going to go out there and invite that family back in. You're going to serve them the best meal in the house, and you're going to do it on the house." The diner held its collective breath. Rick's mouth opened, closed, opened again. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. "This is ridiculous," Rick snapped, authority reasserting itself. "You can't come in here and tell me how to run my business. Policy is policy." A dangerous silence fell. Not the silence of shock, but the calm before a storm. Dwayne's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his presence. The same quality that allowed him to command a theater screen 40 feet tall. "Let me ask you something, Rick," he said, rolling the manager's name with deliberate care. "How many of these good people are regulars here?" He gestured around the diner where every face watched with undisguised interest. "How many stop by for coffee every morning, or bring their families for Sunday breakfast?" Rick's eyes darted around the room, suddenly calculating a different kind of cost. "These people are your community," Dwayne continued. "They're your real bottom line, and right now they're all witnessing how you treat the vulnerable among them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the diner. An elderly man at the counter set down his coffee mug with a decisive clink. "Been coming here 30 years, he announced to no one in particular. "Never seen such a disgrace." The teenage server who had been watching from the sidelines stepped forward, hands shaking slightly as she untied her apron. "My mom was on food stamps when I was little," she said, voice quavering but determined. "If she were here, I'd want someone to help her too." Rick's face contorted, caught between anger and self-preservation. Outside, one of the children pressed his face against the car window, watching the diner with curious eyes. The rain continued to fall, steady and indifferent. "You know what amazes me?" Dwayne said, voice softening as he addressed the room rather than just Rick. "We'll pay $14 for a fancy cocktail without blinking, drop hundreds on concert tickets, but we hesitate when it comes to feeding a hungry child." He shook his head. "I've been fortunate enough to eat at the finest restaurants in the world, but I've never forgotten what it feels like to be hungry." Cindy stepped forward, setting down her coffee pot with quiet defiance. "I'll serve them myself, Rick. Take it out of my paycheck if you have to." A trucker in a worn cap stood up from his booth. "Put their meal on my tab, too." "And mine," called the elderly man at the counter. One by one, customers began to stand. A gray-haired woman with knitting needles, a college student with textbooks spread before her, 2 off-duty nurses still in scrubs. Not just watching anymore, but participating. The energy in the room had transformed completely. Rick's eyes darted between them and Dwayne, calculating his rapidly diminishing options. The teenage server had already grabbed her coat and was heading for the door, determined to invite the family back in regardless of permission. "Stop!" Rick's voice cut through the movement. For a moment, the room froze, unsure which way the pendulum would swing. Rain drummed against the windows, providing a soundtrack to the standoff. Then, surprising everyone, Rick's shoulders slumped. "Fine. Invite them in." The teenage server paused at the door, waiting to be sure he meant it. "On the house," Rick added grudgingly, avoiding Dwayne's gaze. The diner exhaled collectively as the server rushed outside, holding her jacket over her head against the downpour. Through the windows, they watched her approach the car, gesturing emphatically. The mother's confusion was visible even from a distance, her protective stance melting gradually into cautious hope. Dwayne stepped back, deliberately removing himself from center stage, allowing the community to reclaim its moment. This wasn't about him. It had never been about him. The bell above the door chimed again as the server held it open. The mother entered first, hesitant, one child balanced on her hip while the older boy carefully maneuvered the wheelchair over the threshold. They were soaked, clothes clinging to thin frames, but their dignity remained intact, perhaps even strengthened by the ordeal. "Welcome back," Cindy said warmly, already gathering menus. "We've got a table ready for you." The mother's eyes, wary from experience, found Rick. "I can't pay until Friday," she said, chin lifting slightly. The silence that followed was the true test. Not for Dwayne, not for the other customers, but for Rick himself. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." Rick cleared his throat, straightened his tie, and for the first time that evening, met someone's eyes directly. "It's on the house tonight," he said. Not graciously, not enthusiastically, but it was enough. The diner burst into movement, Cindy guiding the family to a corner booth, the cook appearing from the kitchen to take their order personally, customers smiling and nodding in welcome. The older child, bewildered by the sudden change in fortune, clung to his mother's hand. The younger one in the wheelchair beamed, hunger temporarily forgotten in the excitement of the moment. Dwayne remained in the background, content to witness the scene unfold. He caught the mother's eye briefly across the room. A moment of recognition, a slight nod exchanged. No words necessary. She knew who had catalyzed this change, but more importantly, she knew it wasn't just him. It was everyone who had stood up, spoken out, chosen a different ending to the story. Outside, the rain began to ease, droplets on the windows catching the glow of the diner's lights. The crisis had passed, transformed into something unexpected, a community rediscovering itself, strangers becoming neighbors, a policy giving way to humanity. Dwayne settled his bill quietly and prepared to leave, his purpose accomplished. The elderly man at the counter caught his arm as he passed. "My grandson's not going to believe I met you," he said, eyes crinkling with genuine warmth. "But I'm more impressed by what you did than who you are, if you don't mind me saying." Dwayne smiled, the full wattage version that had sold millions of movie tickets. That might be the nicest compliment I've ever received. As he reached the door, Rick approached, posture stiff but determined. "Mr. Johnson," he began awkwardly, "I appreciate what you were trying to do. It's just, with corporate policies." Dwayne paused, hand on the door. "You know what I've learned in my career, Rick? The most memorable moments aren't in the script. They're when you have the courage to improvise." He nodded toward the family, now eagerly digging into steaming plates of food. "Sometimes the best policy is the one you make in the moment." Outside, the rain had stopped entirely. Stars were beginning to peek through breaking clouds, mirroring the lights of passing cars on the wet pavement. the universe returning to balance after a small but significant correction in its course. 3 days later, a local news station ran the story. The cell phone video, shakily captured from that corner booth, had accumulated millions of views. Comments sections overflowed with similar stories, of kindness both given and received, of small moments that changed trajectories, of celebrities using their power for quiet good rather than public glory. But the real story wasn't captured on any camera. It was in what happened afterward. The diner instituted a new policy, a community meal fund where customers could pay forward meals for those in need. Rick, surprisingly, championed the idea, perhaps understanding that good business and good humanity weren't mutually exclusive after all. The mother returned that Friday as promised to pay her bill. She found it had already been covered many times over, with enough left to create a small fund for her son's medical expenses. Dwayne Johnson never mentioned the incident in interviews. He didn't post about it on social media or leverage it for publicity. Some things weren't meant for public consumption or career advancement. Some things you did simply because when the moment came to be strong for someone else, strength was what you had to offer. In a world obsessed with spotlights, sometimes the most powerful acts happen in the shadows, where kindness is given freely, without expectation of return, witnessed only by those whose lives are changed by simple, human decency. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.